Welcome to Hollywood Insider Help, where you can learn more about how to earn a good living as an author, screenwriter, producer, or podcaster. Remember, you can find great live and on-demand training designed to help you earn a good living making media you love at nancyfultonmeetups.com and nfm24.com. Our host is Nancy Fulton. Let's dive in.
My name is Nancy Fulton, and this is an interview with Bridget Fitzgerald. If you have any questions that you want to ask over the course of the event, I hope you'll send an email to nancy.fulton@yahoo.com. And with that, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And with your permission, Bridget, I'll spend a few minutes just sort of introducing you, and so that we can dive into the conversation and people have an understanding sort of who you are. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Great. So tonight I'm interviewing Bridget Fitzgerald. She's an actress, a comedian, and model. She's also a member of National Lampoon's sketch comedy team, making sketch comedy podcasts heard by 500,000 monthly listeners. She has a web series, Smiley Bridge TV, which has had 250,000 views, and she attributes some of that success to two audiobooks, How I Exiled My Inner Bitch, which she acted in, and I, Humpty, which she produced as well as acted in. And you can learn more about her by visiting www.bridgetfitzgerald.com. And the reason that I wanted to interview Bridget is because she's made a real investment in producing audio content, as well as the SAG New Media web series. And it's helped her get more and better acting roles, as well as writing gigs. And it's helped her to establish herself as a producer, a co-producer, and a director, which has broadened her career in the number of opportunities that she has here in the entertainment industry. She's also been asked to work as a judge in writing contests, which creates a whole bunch of new opportunities and relationships, and she consults with those who are producing web series, podcasts, and audiobooks. So having said all that, Bridget, do you want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about how you decided to come out to Los Angeles, what your objectives are for your career? I think that will help people understand sort of the road that you've taken.
Sure, absolutely. I am an actor and a comedian and a model. Actor, writer, model. And now, in order to get more work for myself, I do produce, I direct, I do all these things. And I feel like that's kind of where the industry is headed right now. Actually, I started by writing. I was primarily a writer when I was living in New York. And then I started doing improv because I have a great I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I wanted to be your next big, comedy star. I wanted to be the lead of a romantic comedy feature film. I wanted to be so many things, and those were basically things that enhanced that comedic voice. So I started taking classes at Upright Citizens Brigade, and I started acting in as many small student films as I could get my hands on. As whatever, if it paid pizza, I had pizza. Whatever it was, just to get the experience that I needed. And I was outperforming 5 to 7 nights a week doing improv or stand-up, which I also did for 2 years. Wow. So then I was also doing modeling, print modeling for corporations like IBM, Fiat, Always, all these different brands to try and save up money to move out west because I really wanted to be the lead of a romantic comedy feature film. And so that was where I was going to come because this was going to have more opportunities for me, especially as I got my SAG after card. I wanted to open myself up to as many union jobs as possible, and I feel like Los Angeles is a great place for that. Mm-hmm. So I saved up and I moved across the country. It took me a little while to do it, but I moved across the country like so many of us out there probably listening have done, come from all over to be in LA, in the city of, cinematic dreams. And that's what I started doing here. As I started doing the same thing that I had done in New York, where I was doing these short films. I was producing, directing. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over one very important thing. Musi, which is a sitcom pilot that I starred in, co-wrote with my friend and co-star Lauren Hunter, and then won the best of a film festival called Katya, which is in New York. And then using that, I asked Time Warner. Well, I sold it through Time Warner online, through their on-demand store. So that was like a really cool thing for me to have in my back pocket to bring over here, because I had co-directed on that, I'd produced it, I'd written it, I'd starred in it. And so it gave me just a really good boost of confidence as I came here to Los Angeles. So when I came here to Los Angeles, I started doing more of the same. A short film I did that I wrote called Save the Date, which went to a couple film festivals. And then while I was out here, I started, auditioning for as many things as I could. And one of the things that I did first was what we'll talk about, I guess, in a little bit, which was that how I exiled my inner bitch audiobook, which was looking for comedic actresses. And that's how I really got my feet wet in that audiobook world, which I think that so many of us who are people who are comedic, or who are people who are just actors looking to create a side job for themselves, or new opportunities for themselves. Not really a side job. It is acting, but it's also acting on a timetable you can control, which I think is wonderful for flexibility for an actor's schedule, to be able to say, okay, we have these deadlines, and you can make those deadlines on the same schedule of, auditioning, which fluctuates.
I think that's very true. And then did you have the National Lampoon role when you came out here? Did you acquire the opportunity to work with National Lampoon's web series once you arrived? Like, how did that come to pass?
Well, right before I left New York, I was working on a sketch with one of the creative VPs of National Lampoon, Marty Dundix. He and I made a sketch comedy video that you can, I believe you can see it on my YouTube page, which is YouTube/SmileyBridge, youtube.com/SmileyBridge. So I had that connection, but then when I moved out to Los Angeles, a friend who was visiting was like, hey, have you ever done this podcast? And got me connected to Barry Link, who's the guy out here who runs that. And so that's how I ended up working with National Lampoon out here, which was wonderful. They do it at Sunset Gower, which is relatively close to where I am, and it's just a great opportunity for me to go and meet them, and go and work and really do all these different sketch characters, which really are fulfilling to me as a comedy actor and as a comedy creator.
And working on a podcast, is it similar to audiobooks in the sense that you get to do great performances, but it doesn't have the overhead of like dressing in costumes, or necessarily all the makeup and all of the hassle? I mean, in other words, is that one of the aspects that you like? It's more controllable. There's less flexibility. You don't have to worry about rain happening and stopping the shoot. Was that helpful to you?
Oh yeah, I think it's absolutely much more flexible and forgiving than other formats, because you can do a new take so quickly. Even if there's some sort of weird audio glitch or something, you could just stop and start the line over and keep going, or just do a fresh take, and it's so much more inexpensive than if you had to stop a reel of film, or shut down. Like, if you're on a set, like I was on a set for was it not ultra low budget, but the next one up, modified low budget. And like that's like a huge amount of people, like, to work with that sort of budget, and then like have to do a retake is a lot more intensive in terms of financially intensive, as well as everything else. So it's just like, for me, like, it's basically like a really golden opportunity for people to be able to get their voice out there and be heard and grow a fan base,
Do you actually enjoy the process? One of the things I think is kind of sad about working in Hollywood, having worked with a lot of actors and a lot of writers and a lot of directors, is that because there's so much stress associated with making money in the industry, and there's so much, to some degree, when the projects are really expensive, there's a lot of creative constraint. In other words, we can't shoot everything. We don't have an infinite number of hours. We don't have an infinite number of days. So people are in a position where this is the role, you're going to play it exactly the way the director wants it played, right this exact second. And there's not an opportunity to kind of workshop or experiment with anything because it's just too expensive. Having produced some audio dramas myself, and having worked in audiobooks, one of the things I really like is that it's actually more creative. And do you think actors benefit from the opportunity to actually experiment a little bit more than they experiment with, and collaborate more with fellow actors and with the production staff, because it's not such a rigid hierarchy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot more. I mean, there's always a level of um, creativity and a level of communication, and every project is different. But I will say that um, I've gotten to do a lot of wonderful creative things through audiobooks and through the podcast. The other audiobook that I did after How I Exiled My Inner Bitch, which also was a beautiful experience and a great chance to interact with the actual writer of the book, Miv Evans, who was just a phenomenal writer. She's just a treasure. She had produced that, and she was giving me so much direction and feedback, and we got to play a lot and do different levels on takes and things, and that was great as an actor and as a member of a team to be able to have that time and that really the ability to do that, to kind of take the time, because it wasn't as expensive to create per minute. For the other one, for I Humpty, which is the one that I produced on as well as acted in, there was so much more, well, frankly, so much more leeway in that, because the writer of the source material, he let me basically run rampant with 50 plus audio characters. Basically, I Humpty is a fractured fairy tale book for grown-ups based on a blog. So what it was every single chapter was a different, story with its own set of characters and its own, voices that could be made. And for me, that was just like, I loved every second of it, coming up with all these different voices and all these different options, and making those creative choices that sometimes you don't get to make, because you are ultimately creating the director's vision when you're on a set, when you're in a film, or when you're in a play even. You're ultimately creating a vision created by the entire team, whereas in an audiobook, you kind of have more of that authority to make creative decisions, which is, enticing. Or with a podcast, it's also really fun, at least for us at Lampoon. We always take time to do a man on the street segment, which I think that listeners of the audio podcast love, because every week we get to just improv and do all these different characters, and we will often just make each other laugh with all these unexpected clips that we're throwing back and forth in the room with each other, and it's just this very joyous creation while we're all really, what the great thing that happens when you put a lot of really funny, really talented people together and you let them play, that's what you get, is that segment of the Lampoon.
I think that's one of the things that's really important about working in audiobooks and working in audio dramas and podcasts and so forth, is the fact that it's an opportunity to collaborate in a way that is otherwise really difficult to do in Hollywood. And also it does provide sort of the ability to connect with new actors and new writers and new directors on a regular basis. And it's functional networking, in addition to the fact, and it's pleasant networking, it's creative networking. You get a chance to meet people, and you get to see whether or not you click, because there's a certain magic. Some people can riff off each other in a way that is not is unexpected. and you don't get that opportunity to play around whenever you're working on a sort of a studio production. It's very constrained. It's kind of like the best thing in the world is to get booked on a sitcom, but every single second of a sitcom is scheduled to the 15,000th degree, and deciding to do anything off the wall is a good way to ensure that you don't get an opportunity to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is nice to have that ability to, well, even the time constraints, honestly, of a podcast, because you're the one putting out, like, if you were, say, putting out a sitcom, again, that's for air, then you would have to have it at a certain length of time every time in order to have the commercial breaks that you need for the ad sponsors that are making that television program possible as well. So it's like, one of the great things about a podcast or an audiobook is that you can kind of control that ultimate length and put it in a use your creative judgment and your creative taste to kind of do that as well. Which, go ahead.
No, I sorry.
Oh, well, it's like you could see like how directors like to do a director's cut of a film. It's kind of that same vibe where it's like, okay, well, we would love to make this longer and this part more dramatic, but because other people are, have their needs, or we have an ultimate time limit on this, we have to cut out this, and this just for time, just for the runtime alone. So it's nice to have that ability to say, okay, well, this week the podcast is going to be 36 minutes. This week it's going to be 42 minutes. Like, there's a little bit more stretch and give when you're doing podcasts and audiobooks.
I definitely agree. And the other thing I like is I'm kind of very much a fan of theater. And I think I was mentioning to you, I very much enjoy. I like there's something different about watching an actor doing a stage performance or doing a dramatic performance, that particularly something that seems like it would sort of fit on a stage, than doing something that's highly produced. The kind of work that people are producing. I find myself thinking, would A Streetcar Named Desire, if it came out today and we didn't know who Tennessee Williams was, I mean, that's just an interesting piece. That's not going to end up on TV. It might not get to be a film. It's just too intense, right? But it's totally the kind of thing that can end up in theater, and it's also the kind of thing that can become an audio drama. It's a risk you can afford to take, which is not something. It's kind of, it's a safe place to take risks, and it's one of the few safe places to take risks here in Los Angeles. In New York, where there's a stage on every stage on every corner, and there's somewhat more support for the arts. It's more of an opportunity to put up projects that are kind of edgy. Here in Los Angeles, it's very hard to get an audience for a lot of edgy things, and it requires a lot of, it can be a dramatic activity. But if you want to do something kind of edgy, a podcast or an audio drama, or turning it into something that you write down and turn into an audio book, that's something. It's not a very big risk, and it presents an opportunity to kind of do work you wouldn't otherwise be able to do at all.
Absolutely, and I feel like as a creative person, that if you firmly believe in your vision, you will find other people who also key into that. And the beauty of having a podcast or an audiobook is that you can put this out and let the audience find it. You know what I mean? Like, you can put out your craziest whatever it is, and then know that someone out there on the internet or someone out there who is into podcasts might discover it and think that you're fantastic. And then, you have this new base, which is actually kind of what happened when I started doing, I don't know if it's too early to talk about this part, but when I started doing Smiley Bridge TV, which was one of my 3 web series that I made. I've gone and made a couple web series. One is The Admin, which was great, and we did in New York. And then this one, I saw that the Ovation TV was trying to find projects like web series or art projects or multimedia, and to be a finalist in this contest for a $5,000 stipend. And so I was like, okay, well, I would like to do this, and I presented it. And then I told everyone that I knew about it. And if anyone's ever done fundraising, you know what it's like. You tell everyone, you tell everyone, you tell everyone. Every day you tell everyone about why you firmly believe in what you believe. And Smiley Bridge TV was something that I came up with because I literally wanted to make this world a better place. Mm-hmm. I literally said to myself, I think that there are too many things that are put downs or gross comedy out in the world, and I don't want that out in the world. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm a trained comedy writer and a comedy actor and a comedy maker, director, producer, editor. I've done all of them. Mm-hmm. Cut trailers for clients before. Like, I've done everything. So I said, well, here's what I want to do. I want to put something that's just really sketch comedy for the dork in us. It's mm-hmm. sketch comedy that doesn't have put downs, that doesn't have gross humor, that doesn't have any of these low bar things. I want it to be this positive, uplifting experience. And so that's what I said in my video, and that's what I told everyone over and over again, my friends, my family, and then, I opened it to the world, and I just said, here's what I'm doing at Rocket Hub, and I ended up being a finalist for this stipend. And because of that, I met a lot of new fans all over the country that I did not even know about. They didn't know I existed. I didn't know they existed, and it was this beautiful mesh where they were like, we want to be a part of that. And I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. Please be a part of that. Please be a part of my team. So that's what we did. I met people, and we raised enough for the entire season and then some. And it was amazing. And because of that, because of all these generous people all over the country, I got to make Smiley Bridge TV. And then because of that, we made 250,000 people laugh and made their lives a little bit better. And I was so happy to be able to be a part of that. Like, I was working crazy hours, to try and get it done and to make everybody happy. And I just didn't care. When you're excited about something, you just kind of, I don't know, it's the only time I forget to eat. Yeah. When I'm so excited about a project, and I'm so just stoked and pumped for it.
Well, and the interesting
that's what I did.
The interesting thing is, it's like the opportunity to do that. The opportunity to do that is critical if you want to have creative freedom going forward. One of the things I've noticed is the people who are successful in having incredibly successful careers that get a chance to have their own voice is that they seize creative freedom. Robin Williams was hanging out in New York City, being a mime in Central Park. At no point is that what one would call a responsible fiscal, concept, right? It's like, this is not a money-making venture. But he was very successful doing that. He was remembered for doing it at the time, and he mastered, how to take an audience by storm, how to make not just talk funny, but movement funny, and it led that and his work in stand up, which again is not a fiscally sensible thing to do from any standpoint ever, turned into him being able to build a whole career. And we got it. And then later on, he chose to do drama when people said, well, you're just a comic. And I think to be successful as a creative professional, you have to constantly create opportunities for yourself to do the kind of work that only you can do, to set yourself apart instead of being a clone or somebody who is delivering somebody else's vision of a particular character or somebody else's kind of story, So I think when I look at the work that you've done, it really seems like it just seems pretty apparent that you're going to be successful in terms of establishing your own voice and finding your own fans, and those things will lead to you having the opportunity to do more projects of the kind you like, and to gain more fans and become more successful over time.
Well, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you to say. I honestly, I hope that I'm very touched by that. I don't know what else to say about that. That's very sweet of you to say, Nancy, and I appreciate it.
Well, no, I mean, but it's actually true. I mean, you didn't have to take it. Choosing to, you leap into the fray and go, I'm going to create a web series. Which, especially if you're doing a web series and you go to the trouble to make a new media web series, so you're doing it following the rules of those kinds of projects, and especially doing it multiple times. I mean, it's a thing, and it represents not just you employing yourself, but other people frequently,
I was very grateful about that because as a SAG artist, as a SAG actor, it was to do it as a SAG New Media meant a lot to me because I really wanted to be able to make it be a real opportunity for other actors because so many like web series or whatever will ask actors to do it for a deferred pay, which your rent is never deferred. So it's something that I wanted to make sure that I respected the other actors who were on this as well. And so every contract was signed and everyone was taken care of, So that was important to me as an actor and as a person that we all were on the same team as far as that went. And I think that if you treat other people with respect, then you'll get that respect back. And that's how you create a really good creative opportunity. And that's how you make a really good creative team.
Well, and I also think it means that when people think about somebody they want to work with next time, they go, "Oh yeah, I want to work with her again because she's very professional and because she does things by the book and she plays by the rules. She's not trying to cut corners. She's not trying to." So that's the person I want to work with. There's so much of the entertainment industry which is necessarily in flux. One never knows if it's going to rain, when you're doing a shoot. One never knows if the audience is going to turn up. You never know if somebody, there's just so much uncertainty all the way across the board. So I think the entertainment industry tends to, and people in the entertainment industry tend to value and to promote people who turn up and deliver and consistently deliver in a fashion that makes you think, okay, if I hire this person and something goes wrong or something's unexpected, it won't be their fault. And then also they'll help work past it so that we can all go, we can make it so the project isn't a dead loss. It actually comes to fruition. So I think when you talk about doing the new media series and doing it by the book, making sure people are getting paid, you're sort of setting yourself. People notice that.
Well, I really agree with that and with the point that you made earlier about how you grow your network and how you learn how you make these connections with other people. Because the connections that I made with Smiley Bridge TV, like those actors are in my group now. You know what I mean? And the producers are in my group now. And we've like sent each other information on different projects or kept each other in the loop on different opportunities. And, that's what's going to get you through the entire career is all the stops along the way and all the people in your tree. You know what I mean? So I feel like whether it's an audio book or a podcast or a new media series, these are all opportunities for you to grow your tree and to grow branches in different directions that you weren't expecting that could be quite beneficial to you. Thanks to all of these different people, not only have I made that connection, but I've also had the enriching experience of having made these where, things do go wrong. Anyone who's ever self-produced or directed know that during the production, things don't go as planned. That's why you have to plan for the unexpected. You know what I mean? Like, that's why you add in cushion times. That's why you add in cushion on your budget or whatever, so that you make sure that when something goes wrong, because something weird will happen while you're on set, then you will be prepared to have to face that hurdle and get over it. Like, I had an actor drop out of one of the sketches at the last minute. So I was memorizing lines for a sketch that I wrote at the last minute to make sure that the people who had donated the money wouldn't have spent it in vain, so I could use this very expensive prop that I had gotten, which was bikes, because I had written one sketch about bikes, and this other restaurant was kind enough to donate their restaurant to us for that, to let us shoot inside of it, which was amazing and a wonderful, amazing, incredible opportunity. So I didn't want to waste these two things, so I had to just improvise and work with what I had and use those skills. And now that it's been some time since then, I'm like, what an incredible blessing in disguise that was, because sometimes you get scripts at the last minute and you just have to memorize and get through it and get that, if you don't do it, then you don't get that opportunity. So it's really like honing the skills that you need, the skills to evolve. I mean, as a writer, I'm sure other people listening to this are writers, or they are producers, or they are directors, or they are fellow actors. Everybody knows that part of this industry is change and evolution. It's part of the collaborative process. So being able to hone the skills of being able to fluctuate and change and evolve with these changing circumstances, that's also a reward of having created your own project.
I think that's I think it's an important one. Also, I think when you create networks like this, especially networks that are very functional and they get things done, and people learn that they can count on one another. Individuals identify, okay, this person can be trusted. This person can be trusted. This is the kind of character this person does amazingly well. This guy's brilliant as this kind of writer. When one person is successful, or when as people become more successful, they raise up in the industry. They start getting projects that get larger, and they start looking for the people they could count on. And they don't know all of these people in the industry. There's 1 million people in the industry, but the people that they can count on were the guys that they remember working with when they literally had nothing and managed to put together something good. So they go, okay, that guy, I know they haven't done anything big before, but, I've seen them be very successful with literally with nothing to work with. And so I'm going to pick this person to work with me because I know personally that I personally can count on them, and I already have a relationship with them. And I think this is why you see groups of people come up in Hollywood. Like you'll see, one of the things I think Saturday Night Live does, funny you should mention it, is the fact that you see people be successful on Saturday Night Live, and then they will pull one another onto other projects when they leave. You'll have people go. You'll see teams of people end up working together as writers or as actors because they worked on that show together, and that's how they became acquainted. You're creating exactly that same kind of environment when you build a web series or a podcast that gathers an audience, etc. Can you talk actually for a few minutes? So one of the things that you mentioned that you do is, and that makes sense, that you actually help people create new media projects, and you actually do some consulting and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how you help people with new media projects, or putting together these kinds of projects if they haven't done it before?
Yeah. There's a lot of for some people it can be very overwhelming to go through the new media process. And it was at first for me, the first time I did it, I was very nervous, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much paperwork. It was just this big, scary, nebulous hurdle that I was like, okay, well, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. But the more I actually do it by producing, the less scary it is. It's basically a matter of, honestly, deciding what your budget is, what your budget level is, what you are intending the use of the project for, whether it is actually a new media or whether what you're really intending is for a short film that would go to film festivals. Because with the contracts, like those are written two different ways. Those are two different contracts from an actor or a SAG New Media point of view.
Really? So that's interesting. I'm not sure people know. I'm not sure that people understand that if you shoot something that's a new media project, it's not a film festival project. It's not a short film. It's not supposed to be going to film festivals. So
No, and no, sorry. And once you change that use, like say you, like some young producers don't realize that once you make something for, say, the web, but then you use it in film festivals or you put it on TV on something that's not public access, then you need to pay all the actors because you've just changed mediums on where that, like you need to pay them the base rate of I think 125 it is now, that for switching to a new medium, because that's the way the contract is written. So it's like you can either aim for a short film, which is again for Film Fest, or you can aim for something that's for the web, which is a new media, or and there's still other versions. There's like a interactive, which would be a game, or audiobooks. These are all different forms that you could go to. Or something new that I have to learn a little bit more about myself is actually the SAG commercial, because that has changed a little bit in terms of online use. So the commercials made for online use using SAG actors, I need to get myself more versed in that, because that has changed too. Because the industry is always evolving. It's always changing, and it's always adapting to the new situations that we find ourselves in, where we're in the land of Hulu and Netflix now. So how do we treat that? That's different from a YouTube series. How does the union view that? So,
well, it's interesting because I haven't really found very many people who've produced multiple new media series, and I always think it's a really smart thing to do. I think one of the rules is that you have to employ only SAG actors if you're doing a new media series, versus if you're doing an ultra low budget, that you can employ SAG and non-SAG actors. So there's those kinds of things. The kinds of rules, those are something you can only really learn by actually putting together a project and distributing it, and getting all the way from the beginning to the process to the end of the process. And I haven't really met a lot of people who and I think part of the I think maybe because they become so successful after they do it, they just don't do it, end up doing it again. Or maybe it's the case that they do one of each one, like they'll do a SAG New Media project, then they'll do a low budget film, or a short film, then they'll do a low budget film. So they just kind of go from project to. So it's nice to have somebody. I'm glad that you mentioned that you consult, because I keep getting people who want to do those kinds of projects, and calling SAG doesn't always. They're very nice people, but they're very busy. And when you call them and you ask them questions, sometimes when I've done it, I found myself thinking, I'm not sure I know what you said words, but I don't know exactly what they mean.
Well, yeah, it can be daunting, but I don't know. I guess I've just done it a couple times, and it's a great tool for me. And so when other people need someone who knows that, I've already been there. So it's like, okay, yes, I'll use my knowledge and I'll consult with you and I'll help you to get from that nebulous, scary hurdle, and have somebody who knows the way to lead you through that. So,
well, and particularly the budgeting part, because that's one of the things. That's one of the big issues. Not just budgeting for the actors, but also budgeting for the things that you have to have for the actors in terms of insurance, and if you decide for some strange reason you want to work with something that could be considered stunts and that kind of stuff. I mean, there are rules, and I actually like SAG. I think they do a really good job of protecting actors, and I really don't know what the industry would be like if there wasn't SAG. It would be kind of terrifying, I think.
Oh yeah. I will say that thanks to Smiley Ridge, because of the contract at the time that Smiley Bridge was made and the time the contracts were written, we actually were the reason that one of the people got their SAG card, and I was so excited and happy because he was like this. Marcus Hansen was a really great actor. He's got like some really great sons. He's a soccer coach. He's a great guy. When I was shooting with him, I just wanted to help him out, and that he got his card through that was amazing, and he was so excited to be able to make that next step in his career, because he had been ready, but then there just hadn't been an opportunity for him to get that next waiver that he needed. And at that time, the contract being written as it was, I could get him the last waiver that he needed. So I was very happy and proud to be part of his, ongoing success.
That is very cool. Can you talk, I guess, as we sort of edge toward the end, could you talk for a few minutes about whether or not you think that the work you've done independently has translated into you when you go up for roles, before casting directors that you've never met before, or when you're auditioning for projects, whether or not you think that your background and your credits that you've created on your own are translating into a better chance at getting those kinds of sort of more industry normal, or I don't know, studio style gigs. I mean, has it been helping
Sure.
you, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I just shot as last year. I shot as a host for Lionsgate and for Absolutely Productions, doing a hostess on the street, and I think that was in part thanks to the confidence that I had in myself, because I had been through all these other things already. You know what I mean? Like, after you have been, the lead of your series or the lead of your what have you, there's this inner confidence, and not like bravado, but just, I'm here, I'm present, this is what I do, and I know what I do, and I know I do it well, because other people agree that I do it well. And so not only do I know it, other people know it. It shows in the views that I've had, and that kind of gives you this great platform and confidence, so that whatever room I walk into at this point, no one can take away that experience and that knowledge that I have. The fans that are incredible, that made that possible, and that continue to watch. That I just spent 3 weeks looping back to New York. I spent 3 weeks as the lead of one of the supporting roles. One of the principals for a feature film, a comedy film called Snatchers. And then I got to fly back to New York and, just make people laugh for 3 weeks, and that was wonderful. And then, and that was through, having built my reputation as someone who is funny and a great on-screen actor, because you can see all my clips. They're not hiding. They're right there. They're in that podcast you can tune into. They're on that YouTube page that you can click on whenever you feel like it. A lot of people that I meet after these auditions tell me that they have, looked at my clips, because it's so easy to Google anybody. Like, that's one of the first steps you do when meeting someone. And the beautiful part about having created a new media series or an audiobook is that there's a paper trail almost on the internet of all the great things that you do and all the great ways to discover you. It's like you're setting out, I don't know, breadcrumbs that all lead back to you. So one of the another thing that I really love about that is that for some people it's just like, when I walk into a audition, some people are like, okay, well, tell us a little about yourself. So I went in for a callback for a national commercial, and they were like, tell us something about yourself. And I was like, well, I've had 250,000 views on my web series, Smiley Bridge TV, which I co-wrote and I produced it. It sounds like crazy pants. That sounds like crazy pants if somebody were to just walk in and say, well, like National Lampoon, I do all these things. But it's because of all the little projects that you do to get to that point, all the little things that you've made and that you've grown and that you've shown that you can do this. Until now, wherever you go, that's part of you. And that's part of who you present.
And I agree that it means that when you the fact that you've given yourself these opportunities and all of these credits, and you've done it comfortably, and you know that whether these people employ you or don't employ you, it's just today's gig, because you know for a fact that you can go ahead and build your own project, that something's going to come along because you can make stuff come along. that gives you a lot of confidence, and it makes it so you're much more comfortable dealing with people. And you have a lot more credits because you have created a lot more credits. It's at no point have you been waiting around for somebody to say it's okay for you to work. You've been working constantly, and I think that does completely. When I've hired people to be in my audio dramas, one of the things I find that's interesting is you can tell the people that are just comfortable. They walk in the room and they just get to work, and it's like, and they can be merry and they can be fun, but they're very practical. They're very centered, and it has a lot to do with the fact that they're confident in their performance. They're confident that you're going to like them, and they're confident that they can rise to whatever occasion, and they're confident that if something really crazy goes on, that they're ready to walk out of the room. All of that really translates into a lot of just a really good feeling in a room. The more people you have that are like that, that's what people are looking for. That's what they want to cast, because it translates into great performances, and it translates into shows that people love.
Right. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier, but just for me as an actor, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's also enhanced those acting skills.
Mm-hmm.
Just the experience of just the rote experience of having done this over and over and over and over and over means that now when I have to do this on a bigger budget project, I have that skill. Like, I already have that skill. I'm much stronger, more confident using my acting tools because I've used them over and over and over and over again for all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just did looping for a movie, and that was really a lot easier because I had that experience with audiobooks. And I also did looping. I'm sorry, I should have
Mm-hmm.
mentioned this earlier. I did looping for this Netflix original movie called Happy Anniversary, which you can see now. It has Ben Schwartz, Noel Wells. And being in a loop group and having somebody know that I could be in a loop group is part of, it's a great payday as a SAG-AFTRA actor. And also, it also means that, they know that I can handle it because I've already done all these other works, all these other audiobooks, all these other podcasts. And that led to a beautiful experience that hopefully will lead to another, booking or another experience or what have you. But jobs beget jobs.
That's just really perfect. I mean, I think that's like everything you've talked about really illustrates that it's not a mistake when people decide to take these risks, when they're performers or when they're writers or when they're directors or the producers. It's sometimes it feels, I'm sure people feel like I shouldn't be wasting money on this, but I think you've given 100 good reasons why this kind of investment translates into a payoff for your career in the long run. It's as important as taking acting classes. It's as important, as making sure you exercise all the time. For writers, it's as important as taking classes at UCLA. It's like it's a critical part of your professional development and your to employ yourself is as important as picking up gigs from other people or preparing to do so by doing all of the things that we're told to do all the time. With your permission, I'd like to go ahead and see if people have any questions they'd like to ask you. So if you have been if you've been listening to the call and you'd like to go ahead and send a question in, please email them to nancy.fulton@yahoo.com. Once again, that's nancy.fulton@yahoo.com. And I'm going to go ahead and check because I already saw that somebody did actually send a question. Let's see. I mean, this is a question I don't know if you're comfortable answering. Maybe you could sort of give a ballpark. They asked how much did it cost you to produce your SAG New Media project? So, or do you want to talk about sort of the ballparks that you've worked in producing them?
Well, honestly, you can work on anything from like a shoestring budget to much more. I mean, I've worked on the whole spectrum as far as new media goes, and whether as an actor or as a producer, like being on set for new media as well. That's really a tough question. Like, honestly, it's that's like asking how much a short film could cost. The short film could cost Any, like, it could be donated. Most of the stuff could be donated, and then actors work on a deferred payment. And say you had a passion project, and somebody does it for, like, I don't know.
So if somebody
Like
said they had like $5,000 or $10,000, that wouldn't be too little for them to do a new media project or to start a
No,
podcast or any of the or something like that.
no, that would be that. Those are both different budgets. Those are both workable budgets.
Cool.
Like, it's just what it is then, determining the size and the scope of your project. So, like, that's really a tough question to answer. I'm so sorry. Like,
No, I mean,
honestly,
I think you've given a good answer in that you say you can. There's a lot of variation. If you say that it's possible to do something on 5,000 to 10,000, then you're indicating it's possible to put something professional out, but you have to scale whatever you're producing in order to fit that budget. You can't put out Apocalypse Now.
You can't put out Apocalypse Now. It depends on how many episodes you're shooting. Like, there's a lot of different factors, whether you can find people who are willing to donate, a location. Like, I had that beautiful restaurant that donated a location for the day, because that could eat into your budget as well. How much you've got budgeted to spend on sound equipment or on your DP. How much is the lighting kit? How much is the equipment that you're using? Like, there's a lot of different factors to any budget. So I will say for 5,000 to 10,000, you can definitely create something that you're very proud of. You just have to, define the scope and be clear with what you want to ultimately create.
Well, that is incredibly good advice. If you could, if you were advising somebody right now, and they were trepidatious about diving in to creating something, would you recommend that they perhaps start by launching a podcast, or would you recommend that they start looking for audiobook work, maybe through acx.com or something like that, or would you recommend that they start thinking about a new media series? Like, what do you think is sort of the safest, most comfortable way to get started in doing more work of this kind?
Gosh. Okay. Well, let's see. There's pluses and minuses, and also it's about scope and about what it is ultimately that you want to do, and what it is ultimately that you want to create, right? Like, yes, some things are less expensive. Like, if you're going to create a podcast, that could be less expensive because you could use Audacity to help edit as a free editing software to help edit your podcast together. Or you could buy an buy different things to audition for audiobooks on ACX. You could buy a microphone with a pop screen and just audition from home in your PJs or whatever. And that would be one thing, but then to actually record it, you would probably want to have something a little bit more to help, I don't know, get a cleaner sound out of it than just, a giant space.
Or you might want to rent a studio, or you might want to have go to rent a studio for a few hours so the engineer can record it for you, and then.
Absolutely. Like, it depends on what you're looking to get. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are some things that, you could audition for it on ACX, but then you also need to think about the broader picture. Could you deliver that quality audio as cleanly as you want without the background, with the background as nice as you would like? Because like the ACX standards are set. You know what I mean, for what they want the final output to be, which if you're a SAG actor, that's really great because they actually offer classes at SAG after to help walk you through all the audiobook preparation. And
really? That's interesting.
And you can schedule an appointment with someone who works at the audio lab there. You can practice at the audio lab. You can have someone teach you how to finalize your audio files. All these tools are free and available for you SAG actors listening out there, if that's the way that you want to go. But also, there is another point to, if you wanted to do, a web series, and you just wanted it to be, I don't know, you talking about, like you being a talking head or just
Kind of
talking
like
about your
Lonely Girl,
day or
like
something.
Lonely Girl 15, where it was literally just this girl talking, basically doing a video diary. She was in her room.
Exactly. Exactly. That could grow your audience exponentially, and that's very inexpensive as well. Like it's different ways to approach it, and whether you're doing union or not, like there's different pluses and minuses to each one. But there are always, and I will say this, always low budget options for you actors, for you producers, for you directors. Please give one of these a try. If you're thinking about it, get off the bench because it's time for you to try it. It's not that expensive to do it, and I promise you, you will learn something about yourself in the process.
When you in the past, when you've worked on the National Lampoon podcast, but you haven't actually launched a podcast by yourself yet. You haven't chosen to for one reason or another.
No, I have too many other pots on the fire right now, so I can't do that one too.
I can't have yet another.
I've got all the other things I'm doing.
Yeah, I totally understand. At some point, you just go, well, sure, and I could also cure cancer, but who has time for that? So,
well, I'm also. I mean, I told you that I was a judge for a screenwriting competition. I've read 1,500 scripts for that. Like, there's a ton of things that I'm also doing that I'm not, talking about as far like all the other auditions that I do as an actor, all the other, work that I do. All of that takes time. So you kind of just have to pick your pony and then make that your project for this quarter or this year, or, make a goal for yourself and then fulfill it.
I think you're exactly right. Would you be interested, or would it be okay if I asked if people are interested in reaching out to you, perhaps to consult with you in terms of having you look at help them sort of figure out the web series thing, or consult with them on looking at their scripts and going, well, those of us that only have, $5,000, probably aren't going to put on a whole Saturday Night Live level of show. So this is ambitious what you have here. Do you want to provide your contact information so people can reach out to you for that kind of thing? And I mentioned in passing to those that are listening, just as I always do, I don't get a kickback or anything, and there's no sponsorship involved. Basically, it's just when I pick people to interview, a lot of times I pick people that I think bring skills that members of our group need. So, and you seem to have a lot of skills that people are asking you for all of the time. So, do you want to provide your contact information so that people can figure out a way to reach out to you?
Sure. They can email me at bf@bridgetfitzgerald.com. That's BridgetFitzgerald.com. So bf@bridgetfitzgerald.com. Or you can go to smileybridge.com and shoot me an email there.
Cool. And then I think we have one last question.
Okay.
When you're promoting your work, it sounds to me like you're sort of a lot of the promotion that you received for the web series, if I'm mistaken, had to do with you being involved in contests where participation in the contest provided some level of promotion. Do you have solutions for promoting that you think work really amazingly well for people who are creating this kind of independent media?
Well, I did. It's so crazy. I actually did work as a social media consultant before for a nationally syndicated radio show.
Oh.
That was part of one of just the crazy history of me. So I did learn a lot of tools and tips about, making your social media voice and your impact heard more. That is an extended conversation that I can hone in on more for the project. Basically, use the tools that you have available. If you want to create find out where your strongest supporters are. If they're on YouTube, support on YouTube and build that community there by, subscribing and talking to your viewers and responding. Or if it's on Facebook, then, maybe that's where you should be releasing your newest videos and then sending out information and, providing, daily or weekly, depending on what your schedule and your flexibility is, content for them to see, whether it's on Facebook or maybe it's a Snapchat, maybe it's an Instagram, maybe it's a Twitter. I don't know what your brand is and where your biggest listeners are. So that's kind of a tougher thing for me to do. Like there's a bunch of different big outlets that could all work for you. It just depends on what I don't know if the person asking is doing a drama, if they're doing a comedy, what they are doing. But I can say that find out where your biggest supporters are, and then talk to them there, and then branch out into these other places and expand your audience.
That sounds totally amazing. So, I just want to make sure, and I think you're totally right. It's kind of like how when people ask me about social media marketing, I have a set of things that I always do. But the real issue is that you have to tailor it based upon what the project is. I mean, in other words, if you're making a new version of Barney, Barney the dinosaur, if you're making a show for kids, right? Well, I don't know, man. It's like you probably may not want to promote on like Facebook because the average age of Facebook users is getting ever higher. And maybe they're not on Twitter. Maybe they are the YouTube kids. So
maybe they're in Instagram and you want to do a 30-second spot because that's what they're scrolling through. There's a bunch. If you're doing maybe you do a podcast about, home furnishings, you should probably have a spot on Pinterest, like pin a couple episodes and see what happens. Hashtag them with the topic of the episode. It depends on what your market is and who you're trying to reach, and know where your market is. And if you don't, you should start exploring and find out where.
Well, see, this is the kind of thing that's going to make you end up having to talk about marketing with people instead of producing, and then where are you going to be?
Well, it's part of the thing that you learn the more you do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I actually enjoy marketing. I'm like, I like it a lot, actually. I think it's a form of poetry. But, so let's see. People should reach out to you at, give your website one more time, and do you have a link on your website that allows people to contact you? Because then we can just tell people to reach you through your website.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to smileybridge.com, SMILEYBRIDGE, like smiley face plus the bridge you walk over, smileybridge.com. That's pretty much my brand. That's why it's Smiley Bridge TV. Smiley was my nickname as a kid, so that's why it's Smiley plus my name, Bridge. So I'm on Twitter as Smiley Bridge. I'm on Instagram as The Smiley Bridge. But I'm on YouTube as Smiley Bridge. So
that's perfect. That's actually a really good way for people to remember you, Smiley Bridge. Now that you said that, it totally makes sense. So cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. For people that are listening, I'll be editing this up slightly, just to cut off the bit at the beginning, and we didn't have any big bad noises, so I won't have to delete hardly anything, and then I'll make it available for Bridget to take a listen to, just to make sure she's cool with it being released, and then I'll make it available. I'll make it available to people that signed up through the Gumroad link. If you want to get a recording of this, or you want to be able to listen to it later, you can. And I guess I might make it available on my podcast, because I have a podcast and it's audio. That might be great. So it's which is audioiron.com. So if that's okay with Bridget, then we'll just go ahead and do that. And then if people want to listen, so that people can listen to you later if they didn't get all of the information that we sort of covered, or if they want to share it with other people. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. You are an amazing person to talk to, and I actually do think you're going to be very successful, just because you're just always finding something cool, always looking for the next cool and interesting thing to do, and that's how it works, I think.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I think that you're going to continue to do wonderful things in this world. You already have.
Well, you're really sweet. I like to teach, so I always feel like when I do my events, people are thinking, this is not what other people talk about. And I'm like, I know I'm the gearhead. I'm totally that girl that sat in the back of the class. She had glasses, and she was always the one who was raising her hand. I was that child. I was literally that girl.
So. Oh, good. I was making you laugh.
Yes, no, you were doing great. You were actually truly amazing. Yeah, so we know who we were in third grade. Anyway, thank you very much.
Lovely.
If I can be of service to
Absolutely.
you, reach
Thank
out to me going forward. I look forward to, I can't imagine how, but when you come up with a new podcast or something like that, or you decide to produce a new audio drama, or you do a web series, reach out. I'll tell my folks about it.
That would be great. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. And thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Hollywood Insider Podcast. If you have questions you'd like answered, guests you would like to suggest, or topics you'd like us to cover, please email Nancy at nancyfultonmeetups.com. If you like what you hear, please click to follow the podcast and give us a kind word in the comments. If you find our thoughts and suggestions help you, please share our podcast with other creators who need help. We love being of service to creative minds. This podcast is produced by No Better Friend Entertainment, and this audio recording was copyrighted in 2024. All rights reserved. Music for this episode is licensed for commercial use from pond5.com.